most ancient civilizations known to man grew up beside three great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates in Asia, and the Nile in Africa. For countless centuries, this mighty river has rolled down through the rainless lands of Sudan and Egypt, bringing life and fertility to a narrow strip of land along its banks, and carrying down from the high land of Ethiopia silt from which the great delta in Lower Egypt has been built up. On its broad waters, the feluccas drift swiftly with the current or sail slowly upstream against it. Goods and merchandise of every sort depend for cheap transport on the river, which runs through Egypt like a broad highway. Without the river, Egypt would die. This is as true today as it was in those far-off times when there grew up in the valley of the Nile a new way of life of towns and villages and temples, the oldest and most enduring of the ancient civilizations of this earth. At Luxor in Upper Egypt, the site of the ancient city of Thebes, the massive remnants of the temples of the pharaohs still endure beside the Nile. In these great buildings, an army of priests sacrificed to the gods and to the memory of the great kings buried not far off. Though scarred by time, they testify to the power and wealth of ancient Egypt, a wealth drawn then as now from the produce of the soil. It is August, and the Nile has risen above its banks, depositing fresh silt upon the land, renewing its fertility. The colossal figures of the pharaoh Amenhotep stand mirrored in the flood as they have done each year for more than 3,000 years. In Upper Egypt, the life of the worker on the land has changed little in all that time. The work of bringing water to the land must never stop, and the old well-tried methods are still in use. Here is a kind of water wheel called the sequia, which lifts water from the river into irrigation channels. Another ancient device for raising water, even simpler than the sequia, is the shaduf, a bucket or bowl at one end of a weighted pole. The water is raised by the weight and poured into irrigation channels. This woman is carrying water to her village, which is built some distance away on the desert sand. The fertile soil is too precious for it to be used for building. Each day, the fellahin, the peasantry we might call them, leave their villages for long hours of work in the fields, tending the soil in the same way as in far-off times. Their life is ruled by the same influences as those of the ancient Egyptians: the warm sun, the good black earth, and the eternal river. So, in the remoter parts, life on the land seems to go on untouched by the swift progress of the great cities. Slowly, patiently, with infinite hard work, each farmer tills his tiny plot. But elsewhere, on the larger estates in Egypt, more modern methods are in use. All over the world, more machines are going to work on the land. In Britain, for instance, agriculture is more highly mechanized than almost anywhere else in the world. In the fields, intensive cultivation gives high yields per acre. Mechanized harvesting is swift and efficient. Long years of careful breeding have produced livestock of the first quality, and up-to-date equipment is used to ensure the utmost purity in milk supplies. Equal care is given to the animals raised for meat. Even so, the British farmer cannot feed everyone in Britain. There are only 28 million acres of farmland and about 16 million acres of rough grazing. Out of a population of 50 million, only 1 in about 40 works on a farm. Britain, in fact, has to import about half of her food from other countries. So in this way, Britain has a problem. A problem in common with the people of China. The people of India. The people who live in harsh mountain lands. They must all import food from countries which grow more than they need themselves. Industrial countries like Great Britain sell manufactured goods to pay for their food. The goods must go out or the food cannot come in. But these people have no goods to sell abroad, and so they cannot earn the money to buy food from other countries. Even the food they have is produced and processed in primitive and inefficient ways. With no goods going out and no food coming in, the people queue for a dole of bread from the relief workers. What can be done to prevent this? In many countries, the villages have more people than the land can support. Their food is poor. Their herds ill-nourished. There is nothing to spare for the people in crowded cities who have no land at all. All over the world, the cities grow larger as populations increase. Yet, over half the people of the world are poor and hungry, still using primitive methods of food growing. Short of clothing, short of shelter, sometimes reduced to the very edge of starvation. To wipe out conditions like this, the first step is to help the hungry people of the world to grow more food now. At the same time, work must be found for people who do not work on the land, so that they can make and sell goods. Primitive handicrafts can never produce a surplus for sale. Even a simple machine like this is an advance. With it, one man can supply the needs of many. But more jobs must be found. More simple village industries must be got going so that people can supply more of their own needs and have something over to sell abroad for food from countries that are better off. This is a big job. It covers the whole world. And in order to tackle all these problems together, the United Nations formed the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and several other United Nations agencies. The urgency of FAO's task has been clearly put before the world by its first chairman, Lord Boyd-Orr. And at a great conference in Copenhagen, the late mayor of New York, Fiorello LaGuardia, inspired his audience as he pleaded for the hungry peoples of the world.
Gentlemen, we have tried the old system, and it hasn't worked. We're not taking much of a chance. If we're entirely wrong, it can't be worse than the system we have.
In his forceful, vivid words, LaGuardia urged the world's need for more food, for better distribution of food, for new methods of tackling this great problem which no nation alone can solve. Only by working together in the Food and Agriculture Organization could the nations hope to wipe the ancient scourge of hunger from the world.
This is the opportunity of our age. This is translating everything that's been uttered the last 25 years into action. This is distributing the blessings of nature to all the people. This is creating an economy that's fair. This is putting the parasites out of the temple. This is giving the people of the world new hope.
FAO attacks this huge task in all sorts of ways by encouraging scientific research in the problems of agriculture in all countries, by protecting animals against disease, by exchanging seeds which will resist disease and grow more and better crops, by encouraging modern methods of dealing with insect pests which feed on crops, by helping people to eat more nourishing food and better balanced diets. The so-called backward peoples are being taught the use of mechanized equipment on the land. They are learning, too, how to take advantage of modern scientific progress, care of domestic animals. Many similar projects are going on all over the world, bringing knowledge to the aid of the poorer parts where people are hungry, ill-clothed, and ill-sheltered. More food for everyone is the first big step towards a better life for people the world over.